Well, welcome everybody to this particular roundtable forum where we're wanting to look at the power of a comprehensive school library annual report. I'm Karen Bonanno and I'm the founder and national director for Eduwebinar. And I've been working in school libraries for quite a number of years, but now more so on the outside looking at delivering professional learning, but all the time tapping into finding out what's going on, what's the latest topic, and then bringing in presenters to speak. But in this forum, this is more an open forum, and I'm going to kind of kickstart things, but then open up the mic so that people can also get involved. Just before we get underway, just a couple of things for the position that we're all in, that what we share on this particular roundtable might be relevant to us because of the environment within which we're working. It may not be so relevant, but I'm sure that you'll get different ideas. So the disclaimer is that it's from the perspective of the person who's sharing, and you're going to have to go and do some further research and exploration to go, well, okay, is this going to work for me? Is this the best approach for me addressing something like doing an annual report? And then a restriction is that we don't give permission for any capture, recording or reproduction, but you will get access to the recording, so you'll be able to go back and have a look at that. What I want to do is just start off, first of all, by thinking about, well, what is the purpose of doing an annual report? And then how powerful can it be by looking at some of the key elements and the key reasons for why you would do an annual report? Now, if you want to, it'd be great in the chat if people could say, yes, I do an annual report, or no, I don't, because that way then we get a feel for how we want to kind of continue the conversation. The very first thing is it's an accountability element. And I think all of us know that the school library has thousands of dollars worth of resources either within or accessible via the school library. So there's that need to have some element of accountability back to the major stakeholders who make the decisions about how the dollars are distributed throughout the school. The other thing too is it's giving some accountability for then the resources that you actually are using within the school library. And you have to be honest and say this is being used and that's not being used, and that's all part of when we get into the kind of things that you include in a report. But a key element too is looking at the impact that the school library, the activities, the services, the programs that you run, what impact that has not only on students, but also with staff as well. So accountability is a key factor, and it's powerful because then people begin to see what you're doing. And this is where the next element comes in, this essence of transparency. So it is a little bit of warts and all stuff that you want to put into your report, but of course you want to highlight the things that are significant, but you also want to alert people to the challenges that you're experiencing as well. So you want to reveal things about the finances, the funds you've received, how they've been distributed and allocated, even making reference about by a certain time of the year you've expended the full allocation, but there are still certain outstanding goals that you didn't achieve. You want to focus too on the program. So depending on what you've got, you might have a literacy program or a reading program or an information literacy program or a research skills program. So again, you want to be able to let people know, the key stakeholders, what you're actually doing, what your operations are, and then your services, whether you do Ask a Librarian or whether you do a reference service or reader advisory service, whatever. This is where you really want to expose everything that you're doing so that the people who read the report actually or see it or hear it, and we'll get to different formats later, but they need to know what you're actually doing. And this is where communication is the key. And there are a number of things that you want to communicate. You want to communicate your accomplishments, what you've been able to achieve in the 12 months, but you also want to identify the challenges as well. And again, you want to be honest in what you're saying there as well, without becoming a whinger, if I can use that terminology. And this is, the report isn't there for you to do a little bit of a gripe and a grizzle. The report is there for you to be fairly honest and hold your own space in integrity to be able to say the things that need to be said. You also want to communicate what your future goals are. What do you want to achieve in the next 12 months? Because that all feeds into things when you come to the end of your report, where you're looking at the budget you're asking for and the recommendations that you're putting forward. The annual report is also a chance for you to do some evaluation and reflection and looking back and looking at the performance, whether it is aligned with circulation or number of meetings you've held or number of different programs or special events, those sorts of things, but also your progress towards your goals. And you need to be able to communicate that to, say, the principal, if the principal is a person who is needing to read the annual report, or it might be someone in your line of supervision who's actually going to read the report. But this is where you want to be honest about how you've done, but also put that information into the report as well. And then the last point is maybe think about, well, what fundraising have you done? Now, I know that's a little bit of an odd term to use, but it could be that you've had an event where the funds that have been raised by that event are being distributed and allocated to the library. I remember the last school that I was working in as a full-time teacher librarian, it was the canteen, the school tuck shop, who would do fundraising, and they would allocate a certain percentage of their funds to the school library. So you've got to think about where you're getting the money from, and then again, it's demonstrating that impact and the value that you provide back to the school community. Now, what I'm going to do is just stop sharing there so that I can have a quick look. Let me just put everybody on gallery so I can see you all and see whether there's anyone who wants to say something about some of the elements that I've raised there, if anything was a surprise, or whether you think that there's more things, you know, for the power and the purpose of why you'd have a school library report. Because I can see that some of you do reports, some of you saying it's not really required, wanting to know more about how to support the schools that I support. So I'm assuming
Karen?
There.
That's my comment. Yeah, hi.
I
think I'm in a bit of a different position to what is traditional, in that I support all the schools in my Catholic education archdiocese. Okay. So while I haven't had the need for my role in a school to provide an annual report, my head of library has always done that. I think it's really important for me in my role to understand different perspectives of what people do for their reports, so that I can mentor those teachers in library and the teacher librarians we have in our schools. But not only that, I think I went to the webinar you had a couple of weeks ago with Laurie, and I think I'm just consolidating that information, and I think it's really important for that strategic planning process. And when you talk about evaluation, it's that reflection of what have I done this year, where can I improve that, and how can I help this position grow to provide the best support that I can for all of those schools. So that's probably elaborating a little bit more on my...
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, because everyone will be in a different position. You'll either be maybe even working on your own, but in your case, you're supporting other people. So you've got to be realistic in what you're going to try and achieve. But the more that you're able to communicate what's happening in the school library, in everything that you do, the better chance you've got of getting some acknowledgement, some recognition in the way of, more funds being allocated, or explanations in a little bit more detail as to maybe why that doesn't happen. But if you're not putting information out there for the particular individual to read, then they don't know what's going on. And this was something that came up, a decade or more ago, when the school library inquiry was on. The constant term that came up was that the staff were invisible, and the school library subsequently was invisible. So by doing an annual report, you're actually increasing your level of visibility, because a lot of people don't probably know really what you do, or they have some weird presumptions about what you do within the school library. So I think we've got to look at using whatever opportunity we have. And when I talk about formats, there are different formats that you can use, like a little snapshot, or you can do a full written report, and they all have a place for the way that you want to communicate. Yeah, Catherine.
I was just going to ask, what sort of detail do you go into? I have just finished our annual student book report, the library report for that, which I usually write, at least a page of all the things that we did. And this year we have Accessit as our library system, and they provided, it might have been last year or the beginning of this year, like a Canva template.
Yep.
And so I used a modified version of that and had, obviously only until October, but the amount of people we'd had at average through the door, and what an increase that was, and how much borrowing it was, and that what increase that was. And that's actually really encouraging to us too, because we hadn't realised how much our borrowing has gone up and how many people are coming through the door. So that was really good for us to read. But that also made us think, I have a few others that I work with, that maybe we could do a report to leadership. So do you do something like that, or does it need to be in detail? Does it need to be an actual report, or can it be a bit more fun, I guess, a bit more interesting?
Well, it's a little bit of both. For a start, whoever you're going to give the report to, do you know how they like to receive information? Like if there's someone who is more the big picture thinker in the school and has all these, amazing ideas of where the school's going to go and all this sort of thing, and you're writing the report for them, they just want a big picture of what's happening. So that's where like a one-pager infographic using Canva template might be enough just as a teaser for them, but then giving them the opportunity that if they want more detail on some of the components that are in the visual infographic, that you can give that to them. But then you might have another person another principal, or your chain of command, or whatever you want to call it, they might be more into, I really want to know the detail. And you'll pick that up because they'll be saying things to you. Do you know that in the library you get, and they'll give the specific amount of money that you're allocated. And that is like for me, that's kind of a bells ringing going, oh, so you want more detail because you've just told me you know exactly how much money is given to me. And, they know the detail of the hours allocation you've got and all the rest of it. So for them, they want a more detailed report, which means that probably is likely to be something in a written format that might be maybe several pages long. And then if you're not quite sure, if you can't kind of pick up the feel for that, then it might be you do a little bit of a combination of, written visuals, graphics spread throughout or whatever, but kind of work out the type of person that you're writing the report for. But then you're always going to give the person so much, and then give them the opportunity to maybe have a conversation with you, or maybe provide them with more detail, or if there's something that they want more specific information about, that can be provided. So yeah, just kind of be open. Now, and I saw Kathy said about something about when do people do their report. Feel free to keep the chat going. I'm not going to kind of monitor it too much, but if people have done reports, when do you normally do your report? So someone says quarterly, it's in the line manager. Yep. I guess there is a point in time when you are being asked what your budget expectation or wants are. So, of course, timely for getting information to them to help them make decisions about when they're deciding, well, okay, this is when we're going to do it. So it's really a case of deciding. And for most people, it is the end of year. It's in this in this last quarter of the year that you'll put your report together. All right, people interested in knowing what's usually included in reports. All right, let me go back to sharing screen. Okay, so this is me just doing a kind of a scout around and finding from various, because there's a lot of information out there. There, you know, individual people who are practitioners have websites where they say what they're doing and they share, and I'll have a number of links that you can look at later where some people have actually gone into detail of what they do. But the main thing is it's important that you have like an executive summary. So this is if you're doing like a written report, because that executive summary gives the overview of the content. And this is what you're going to try and use to capture the attention of the person for them to go, oh, okay, I really do think I need to read this report because there's some interesting things. So in that executive summary, you want to put in things like the achievements, and I'll give more detail in a moment of what those might be, but achievements, your challenges and your plans for the future, because then they get an overview of what's happened during the year, what your challenges were, and then what you want to do going forward. And then, of course, at the end of the report, you want to give recommendations. So you've got executive summary, then you've got all the detail and the kind of the meat in the sandwich, and then at the end you want to do recommendations. In the brief introduction, that's where you might just kind of give some background about the mission, vision, goals, or whatever you want to call them, or the purpose of the report. And in that time, it's important that you try and look how you align with the school's direction as well. Because if they can read the report and see that you're doing everything within the school library to address the ultimate outcomes for what the school is wanting to achieve, then there's, again, a higher level of, oh, okay, I'm interested in reading what this particular faculty area discipline of the school is doing to look at how it's working towards helping us achieve the outcomes for the school. You may even put in there a little bit about the profile of the library, how many staff you've got, how many hours, all those sorts of things, general size of collection. And then when it comes to the highlights and achievements, it's always good to start off with the great, amazing things that you've been doing. So it could be notable events. You might have had an author visit, or you might have had, I don't know, a book fair, or you might have had a particular event that was held during Children's Book Week, or, those sorts of things is what you'd put in there. And you'd put in activities. It might be maybe you've won an award, or the school library has been recognised. So they're the sorts of things that you would put in there. And also any success stories. So anything that maybe students would share or staff would share. And it could be that you have a way of capturing your data whereby you're getting students to say something about what the school library's done, or what you personally, as the professional person there, has done. Well, put those in, little snippets in. You can do, you can set them out in a way that it is obviously a little sidebar, and this is a student's success story or comment. So they're the sorts of things that you can include in highlights and achievements. Then, of course, the library usage statistics is the traditional way that we would do things, where we'd look at circulation, we'd look at library visits, we'd look at frequency of class visits, we'd look at staffing booking of your time, or class booking of your time, or meetings that you had with staff. You'd look at if you had a particular event, like an author visit, you'd want to look at attendance, or you'd want to look at the year levels that came. So they're the things that you include. So it's not just about your collection and its distribution and its use, it's about all the other things that you offer as well. So for some of you, you may have a booking timetable. And so it's quickly to go back through that and see how certain sections of the library have been booked, and also your time being booked. So they're the sorts of things that you'd put in your usage and stats. And even if you've done a report before, this is interesting where you can do a comparison. And the reference made by before about Laurie's session was that she would show her calendar that from the previous year and what it looks like now. So they're the sorts of things where people can see that there has been changes made. So you can do some comparisons of previous years if you've got the data. Then, of course, your collection is all about, well, what does your collection look like? What's its growth? What new acquisitions have you made? What are the various formats that you have available for student and staff to access? What weeding have you done throughout the year? What's the budget allocation been and how you've spent it across maybe a range of resources. So you can do kind of a breakdown of things to maybe look at, what physical resources are there, what digital resources are there. And then there might be, you might have had a particular resource that you purchased because it was driven by student request, and you might make a comment about how well that was received, and all of those sorts of things about what you do to build your collection and how you actually build it, and then how you actually refine it in that you're weeding stuff out that isn't being used and what you might be doing with it. I don't know whether any of you have any technology that you have within your school library, but some school libraries actually manage some of the technology distribution within the school. That's another thing. Like, for instance, it could be, the library is where the charging of the iPads are or something like that. So again, it might not be directly related to your immediate service, but it's your library's being used as that space. I know in my last school library I had, a whole section of it was taken over by the class sets. So that was something that reported on, even though the library staff weren't actively involved in managing the class sets, but it took a classroom space out. And so that's why we included that as well. Then if we go to collaborative activities, this is really, well, what are you doing with teachers? What are you doing with students? Maybe what are you doing outside? Maybe you had people who came and toured your school library. So it could be even beyond, with connection with other schools, or it could be things that you're doing at looking at curriculum integration. So this is where you would cover off those. So you'll get the slides, so you'll be able to go through these again, because there's another slide here. So let me just make sure. Here we go. All right. So student and staff feedback is important because you want the students and staff to sing your praises. And you could, if you wanted to, not actually have a section about that, you could intersperse this throughout your report as those little sidebars in relation to what you might be talking about. So, for instance, if you're talking about collection development and you have a process whereby students have a suggestion box and they make suggestions and there's a comment or feedback that someone's made about how great it is that the school library listens to us and buys us the type of things that we want to read, then, of course, you'd put that as a little sidebar in that section of the report. Also consider about professional development. So really, what professional development have you or other members of your staff engaged in, and what have been the benefits of that? So that's important as well, because at some point in your budget, you want to put in that you want some dollars that you can allocate to your future professional development and learning as well. Then we come to challenges and areas for improvement, because you've been through all the good stuff. Now you want to start to get to the nitty-gritty. And that's really about what challenges you've experienced in delivering services or programs or supporting students or resource collection development to align with reader demands or with curriculum demands. They're the sorts of things that you would cover off in there. And what you want to do is be also, pardon me, a little bit of a problem solver. So if you've got a challenge, come up with also a solution as well. because anyone who's in leadership will be impressed that you've made the effort to not just unburden yourself about all the challenges you've got, you've also indicated the way that this could be resolved, the solution that could be achieved. Then you want for your future goals. So what do you want your future goals or objectives, however you want to term that, for the next 12 months? And then come into then the budget and financial. So this is an overview of what you've spent, but where you need the money going forward and how it's going to be allocated. And that's where you might have a certain amount of money for resources, certain amount of money for technology, certain amount of money for professional learning, all of those sorts of things, because it's important that you connect the dollars to the parts where they can see that you're making a difference and that there is an area that needs to be developed because of the services or the demands and the expectations that are there. And then you can just make a few recommendations at the end. And of course, put those recommendations in the order in which you hope to achieve them, because as we all know, they will look at ways that they can just sort of chop off and say, well, we're not going to give you this, we're not going to give you that. So make sure the things that you really want to get are at the top of that recommendation list. So the whole thing is there's all different ways that you can go about collecting this information. As I said before, you might have, or you've got your library management system for a start, that you might have a booking system where people are booking either technology, rooms, staff, time, all those sorts of things. And then you might use some interviews, or you could use some surveys, or you could just use some observation. So, for example, one situation that I heard about was in regard to getting some different furniture into the library, was because they were observing the way students were using the current furniture. And when kids wanted to read and relax and what have you, a standardised chair table sort of thing wasn't really going to be the thing that was going to be conducive to providing a good reading space. So all of those things can be put into the report as well. So I'm just going to stop share again and see whether anyone's got any comments or anything that you add. For those who do reports, is there anything else that you put in your report that I didn't cover off? Yeah, so Murray said I do a snapshot visual report, yeah, and email it. Yeah, it could even be like a thing that you just kind of leave in the staff room, or, it's something that people can see that quickly gives them an overview of what you do. And then, of course, if they want to know more, they know where they can go to find you. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to do a little bit of Chat GPT and see what it brings up for us. Because for me, even now, I'm using Chat GPT to just do some of the grunt work. That means I don't have to start cold with anything. I can use it as a basis. And then because of my own understanding and knowledge, I then start to go and tweak it. So let's just see if this will work. So can people see the Chat GPT? Thumbs up if you can. Yep, okay. All right. So what I did, I just did some pre-prompts, and I've got them in the slides as well. So I'm just putting this pre-prompt in here. So it's got here, telling the person, and this is the way I kind of work with Chat GPT. I give it a role, I give it a task and a context, and then see what turns up. So I put this here: you're a teacher librarian in an Australian school and you plan to prepare an annual school library report for the principal of the school. What should you include in the annual school library report, and how should you go about collecting information? So let's see what ChatGPT comes up with. All right, didn't like what I did there. Let's try again. All right, doesn't like what I'm doing. So let's play a different way, because I actually did a pre-report thinking that something like this might happen, where ChatGPT goes, I'm not going to work today. All right, so can everybody see that, the Word document? So it's the same cue that I put in before. So what it does, it says preparing your report, important task, helps demonstrate value, impact, comprehensive guide of what it is. So then here it goes through giving you dot points under the different tech. And you don't need to, just looking at this, you don't need to follow this as in the order. It might be that you knowing the person who's going to read the report, they're going to be more interested about the highlights achievements first rather than library usage stats, because library usage stats is kind of reasonably, well, not dry information, but it's kind of fairly structured. So you've got to kind of work out what are they going to read. But you want to do this executive summary intro, and then you kind of work out what are you going to do. And as I said, student feedback, I'd put them as little breakout sessions. But then it gives you that. And then tells you here about your graphics, recommendations, acknowledgements, distribution. And then here, when collecting information, make use of data sources, including software, surveys, interviews, staff, regularly maintain records throughout the year to facilitate the reporting process. This is an interesting one. Consider an annual library assessment plan to help you gather and analyse data. So that could be interesting, another kind of prompt you'd put in to find out what that might look like. And then another prompt I put in, I reversed it. I said that you're a principal and you require the teacher librarian to prepare the report. What do you expect in the report? Now, it gives a different perspective here, but it's still important to have a look at that. Now, would people like me to include this in the email when I send out to you? Yeah, I see lots of heads nodding there. I'm just disappointed ChatGPT wasn't going to be cooperating. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It's always best to be prepared. And then I put, this is a kind of extension prompt. So if you're familiar with it, you put in your first thing and then it does its little bit. And then you go, okay, do I want to know a little bit more about this? So here I ask the question about what's the best format, and so that the principal will read the report. And again, it gives you, table of contents is, I guess, important. I didn't refer to that before, but that's useful. Definitely visual, data integration, bullet points, tone and language, proofreading. Yeah. So would people find that helpful? Yeah. Thumbs up if you, okay. All right. So I'll just stop sharing. So that's just a way that you can use certain facilities to be able to look at doing certain things. And I use it for things like, because I do contract work for a group called the Genius School, and I do it for lesson plan outlines. I do it for creating rubrics of assessment, even putting together emails that get sent to the parents so that I'm writing it in a tone that the parents will appreciate and understand, all those sorts of things. So I just find it quite useful. Because in the busyness of the day, it's a case of sometimes you just don't have the chance to do everything. Okay. Now I'll go back to sharing again. But what I will do first is just have, if I can find the chat. It's disappeared on me. Oh, here it is. Okay. Just checking. Planning activities, but not a report. Yep, certainly. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so Beryl, great. Including photos, infographics. And this is this point that I want to raise here while we're talking about this. Just go back to share screen again. Is making sure that you've covered all perspectives. So you've addressed the usual 5 W's and how, but also you've addressed a blend of the way that you present the information. That there's, text for those people who like text, there's visuals for those who like visuals, and it may be that you get the chance to speak to your report, so that element comes in as well. When I was at a high school in central Queensland, the principal never wanted to read anything. He just wanted me to come into his office and talk to him. So I had my notes that I needed, but he wanted to have a conversation, not necessarily read anything. So that element is there as well. And you might even do include some videos if need be, if that's important, particularly when it comes to student and staff feedback. That can be fairly powerful as well. So using some mixture of visuals. But definitely when it comes to giving your recommendations, that's where you want people to take some action. So, that comes to the kind of the how component. How are we going to move forward in this next 12 months? And these are the recommendations. And these are some thoughts that I've got as well. Okay, I'm just going to stop sharing to see whether anyone has any comments or any questions, because I want to get on to looking at the different formats, whether you do just an infographic or whether you do a written report. And I've got a number of links that you'll get access to where there are templates that you can use. Okay, so we've got about whether you email to principal or others. So that goes back to the stakeholders. Again, it goes back to find out how these people want to receive their communication and then do it in the best way that will connect with them, because ultimately you want them to read it. If you just, pop it in their pigeonhole or you pop it on their in tray, it may never get read. But if you know, then that's something that can be useful as well. So Megan's got, would you include the overall statistics of how the school is going in literacy by including NAPLAN results? My thought is you have to be able to kind of indicate quite strongly how the school library contributes to the literacy programs within the school for that to be relevant. And so that's why if you have a literacy program, that's where you would be looking at not necessarily talking about NAPLAN results, you'd be talking about the literacy outcomes of the students who participate in the program. And that's why it's good if you've got a previous year, you can say that you did a pilot program in this year. It was then rolled out to other classes in this year, and these are the changes that have been seen, and this is what the teachers are saying. So if you really want to have a focus on literacy, and each of you will have a different focus that you want to develop within the school as well. But I mean, other people can make comment, but I really don't know how you make a direct connection to the NAPLAN results with what you do within the school library, unless you have a specific program which is to assist the students to prepare for NAPLAN. Okay, so are we okay? You want to move on and have a look at different formats? Yes? Thumbs up if you do. Okie doke. All right, let's go back to the screen. All right, so there's and again, you'll get the slides for this, so you'll be able to check these links for yourself. So I'll actually go out to these links as well, because it's important that you kind of see the visuals as well. But this particular link has, it's all focused on infographic reports, whereby it just captures a snapshot of the key elements that you want to communicate. And what this particular Google site does, it gives you all different tools that you can use, and it gives you access to templates. So it makes it quick and easy for you to access and then just fill out your data. So we'll have a look at that in a moment. Then this one is from a particular library where they do both. They do a combo. So they do an infographic as kind of the teaser, but then they have a written report, and we'll look at that as well. Then this particular organisation's slide team, they have all different formats available for you to look at annual school library reports. The one I've picked up here is the written report, because it has a template. Now, there is a cost involved in that, but if you don't want a cost, you can actually go through and have a look at what they've got, and it gives you an idea. So you don't pay anything, just that you don't get the template, which means you've got to go off and create your own. And then this one looks at different formats as well. The page, yeah. So this is the first site. And so what they do on this particular site, they just give you all these different tools. So they talk here about Canva, and then they have a link to an infographic template in Canva. Now, you can have most schools can get Canva as part of education, so it means that you can access this. But you can see here how, they've used it, and it just captures a whole lot of stats in a way. But it's interesting information. And then, they've got a link here that can take people to other information, which, might also be that if you wanted to, you could use a QR code in the infographic, which means if you want to find out more, click on the QR code, and the QR code takes them to something like a written report that gives you more detail. And this is the same here, Adobe Express, if the school subscribes to that. Genially's another one. So these are just examples of how they've used Google Slides. So here's a template, same content, it's just using the different tools that are available to be able to do that. So again, it's good because it means that you don't have to start from scratch. You can just use the template and, fill in what's relevant for you. So here, Adobe Illustrator. And then here, they've got their example. I asked ChatGPT a question. What are some of the things that should be included in the infographic? So that's there on that page as well. So that might be interesting for you to have a look at. Then this one here, this is the one that did the infographic. So that's a different infographic that they've done, you can see. So they've got here, the initiative. So this is where you could have your achievements or what have you. They've got here the top titles, the reading, stats, research, and then they have the written report. And that's the written report that they do. So this is a Google Doc. So you can see here what they've included. So that's there for you to have a look at. And then the next one, this is the one that does the template. So yeah, there's kind of free stuff, but if you want to, you can just scroll through. This is a written report, so there's 22 pages to the report. So it gives you the table of contents, okay, and then it goes through the overview of the school library, message from the principal, school background, mission, values. They've used different visuals there, academic highlights, they've used a lot of graphics and stats here. But this can give you an idea of what you can include in the process. So here they've got a quick summary of the collection, key focus, key highlights, a key point here, key highlight 382 ebooks circulated. So someone can have a look at this and just quickly see what's happening within the school library without being dense text in what it is. And if you want to, at this particular slide team, you can key in and look, can search for infographic school library report, and you'll see that there'll be a template for that as well. So there's different templates for different things. And this one is, kind of a collation. So this is a list of school library and reports during professional development and just different formats. So here, this person's done a video as their report, PDF, flipbook, Prezi, Animoto, LibGuides, infographic. So that's just a whole list of different schools and the way that they've done that. So this person's used a web page using Weebly. So again, it's really a case of, what's going to be, what do you believe the person who needs the report is more, I guess, interested in reading? Do they want detail? Would they watch a video? Would they, do they want something like that report that's got it's got a lot of detail, but it's got it all set out in graphics and so forth. So that's really, up to you to be working out, knowing the person who's going to read the report. Or if it's the first time of doing a report, you might do something that's fairly short and use kind of the infographic, but maybe, a couple of pages of infographic. But you can use your library management system to capture a lot of that detail. Any comments, any thoughts? Anyone saying, I don't want to do this, or it's all too hard, or I can't wait to get my hands on the template to do something?
I'm quite looking forward to it. You've made me all excited about doing it now.
Well, you'll get the slides, and that means you can check out those templates. And, if someone's done it before, then why reinvent the wheel? And I don't know whether you're connected with people in library networks. Ask in your network who would be willing to share their particular report. What I find is when I went out and did a whole lot of searching, it's a lot of US-based schools that tend to be sharing a lot of stuff, not many Australian schools. But thankfully, you can see from the links that I've shared, there are people who've put some time and effort into making information available. I've also included, just go to share screen again. Let me just get that up. Come on. I've also included a couple of links here as well. This particular group provide more detail about things you might include in your report, how you might go about collecting your data. And Library Girl, some of you may know of Jennifer as well. She's always willing to share a lot of stuff in what she's doing.
Karen, it's Mari.
Yeah.
I think that the doing an annual report can be a really positive thing, and to spend a bit of time on it, because it gives you time to reflect on your year and
Absolutely.
to gather all the thoughts. I started working on some of this stuff today because I have to do my annual review and reflection with my line manager. And it's only when you really go over all the things that you realise how much has happened in a year, and you're reminded of the goals that you set earlier in the year, and you've got to then think about what progress you've made and what you want to set for the following year. So I think it's a really, really important and very valuable exercise if you put the effort into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree with you, because this report is for you as much as it is for your line, manager or supervisor. And as you say, you might surprise yourself as to what you've done. You get to this time of year and you're thinking, oh, wow, it's been so busy. What have I done? And this is a great way to reflect back on that. But also, too, to see whether you were realistic in what you set yourself for the year as well. You might have just been a little bit optimistic. And this is a fault that I have. I'm one of these intuitive, optimistic people, and I usually set some high goals of what I want to achieve for the year, and then I find I don't get them, but I think, okay, let's just back off here a little bit and be realistic, but still surprised at what happens over the year. So I think it is a good chance to review what you're doing. Thanks, Mari. Appreciate that. So any other final thoughts? Otherwise, I'll just do a little close off, because we have one more event happening at Eduwebinar before the year ends, and I think you'll find it interesting. I think you'll be interested in what it is. So let's take away the mystery and bring that up for you. All right, so the very final webinar that we'll do for 2024 is with Dr. Belle Aldman and Dr. Jenny Bales about the National Centre of Australian Children's Literature. Now, I don't know whether anyone has ever visited that particular centre in Canberra, but Jenny went and visited that centre maybe about a month or so ago, and she just said to me, she said, you need to allow Belle and I to do a webinar for you on this, because it is just so valuable and there's such rich resources readily available for everybody to access. And also, too, because it is like a not-for-profit, it means that it has to be sustained by donations, and also I think it's the University of Canberra allocates a certain space there that that this centre is available. And then also Belle, she is a director of that centre, but I think it's, pardon me, I think it's a case of she does it on more of a give back basis, so that because she has such a love for literature. So that's coming up. That's our last webinar for this year. And my commitment to Belle was to say to her that Eduwebinar would donate 40% of every registration to the centre, because I believe it's worth investing in. It's worth giving back as well. So that's coming up. And those who have heard Jenny speak know that she really is across the children's literature. I know in her role as adjunct lecturer with Charles Sturt University, she has been instrumental in a lot of the courses that deal with children's literature, and in particular services in school libraries. So that's coming up, and that will be our very last event for 2024. And the other thing is, don't know whether you've noticed, but this week on Monday, a revamped, refreshed Eduwebinar website was launched. Still needs a little bit of tweaking, but anyone who would have seen, I did send out an email to say that about 4 weeks ago, the site was on its last legs, and I'd had a good run. I'd had 12 years with the site, but unfortunately the coding in the background was starting to get a bit wobbly, and so I had to do a revamp of the site. So check it out, and if you want, you can give me some feedback. I'm still in the process of tweaking it with the team who did the build, but trying to get a cleaner, fresher look, which is available through mobile, iPad and desktop. So that's all that's been happening in my part of the world. So I really look forward to having you, if you are able to, join us for that last event. If not, I'll take the opportunity to wish you all the best for the remainder of the year and for the festive season coming up, and really, enjoy having a bit of a break, because it's been a pretty busy year, I think, for everybody. From what I've been hearing, a lot of people were feeling that the year was just quite a challenge, in particular the last term. So thank you for joining me and giving up your time to be on this particular broadcast, and I look forward to seeing you again when we're on another session. Thank you.